So hi there, welcome to lesson 1, module 9. We need to do what we call an overview of cleaning. How does that happen? Some of them we have started building up, I think someplace in module 3 where we talked about how to, track these inconsistencies or these irregular things in the checks. So we're going to look at that now and just, tidy up all we have learned when it comes to checking for completeness, clarity, and inconsistencies. Okay, so let's go into those two things that are critical. There are two things critical for the cleaning overview. You need to collate the errors and you need to fix them. Very straightforward. Collate and then fix. Collate and fix. Okay, so I need to take you back to this because this was the last, more or less, one of the last slides in the first module. In our journey to credible data, we have gone up to point 3 now. The errors are generated during the checks between check and clean, but the errors are fixed between clean and the final data. So this is how it works. You need to check your data and you generate errors, so you collate them. As you're generating the errors, you're collating them. But when you have now seen the errors, you now have to find a way of fixing them. So let's talk a bit about this collating of errors. So whether it's completeness, clarity, or consistency, it's just best to get it done with Excel. Most of the time, not everybody has the Stata software, and Excel is easy to format, give colors, do a lot of stuff, so you can easily distribute it quickly to people who need it. You can also use this data target the people who need to have them. Okay, let's go through the sequence again. So you do your check-in with data, which is fine, and then you collate all the things you've checked with Excel, and then you clean with data. That's basically the sequence and the logic, and we have done a bit of that, so we're not going to take so much time with this exporting with Excel. So when you do your checks, you put a feedback into Excel, share with the stakeholders. This was good, this was bad, and then you sanitize based on what they send back to you. You sanitize and clean the data to the best of your ability. So we have gone through this syntax before, and we're not going to waste so much time. We're just going to emphasize a few more things. So all the stuff will be sent by Excel, and we had done some of this in previous modules. But what I want to really emphasize here in this particular lesson is the importance of those ID variables we mentioned when we're doing completeness. Now, can you imagine if myself and Bill Gates had the same bank account number? When you make transfers, we'll both get it, So I guess he gets quite a number of um inflows into his account. I'll be glad, to share the same account number with him. So I'm just trying to tell you that there are certain things that cannot be shared. Bank numbers, telephone numbers, DNA, they're just unique to one person. They can't be shared. And that's why it's very important that we work with those ID variables. So let's look at this data set, for example. They collated data for monthly salaries for some workers, but some of them were wrong. So they got feedback. For example, James Smith in row 2, his salary is supposed to be 31,244. So if I say, oh, just correct James Smith's salary, I've done this before, just say if it's equal to James Smith, change James Smith to 31,000. There will be a problem because if you look at the list closely, you would find two James Smith of the same age. There's James Smith in row 2, there's James Smith in row 8, and that in itself is a challenge. So there has to be something that helps us know which of the James Smiths we are changing for. Because when you do your changes, it will reflect in row 2 and row 8 if you mention James Smith. So that we just go based on the conditions you have made and implement the changes. So that is the danger. Always try to ensure that before you are able to do your cleaning, there is an ID variable that can go specifically to the observation you are talking about and fix them. So they have the same parameters, but if we had a student ID or worker ID, it's now easy to differentiate. The James Smith on row 8 is different from the James Smith on row 2. So if you said change if the student ID is blah blah blah, then it will help. So always remember that it's very critical that before you really start your cleaning process, you have some kind of cleaning parameter. Now, this doesn't always happen, but you know, it is one grand principle that works in all situations. You will not go wrong with an ID variable, but you are likely going to go wrong if you choose some other variables. Now, that does not mean it doesn't happen. I have used other variables other than ID variables to correct data, but the principle and the background was known behind it before I did that. So it's very important that as much as possible, I always insist that we have it. Otherwise, we can still take a cautious step and still fix the data or clean it up um, without the ID variables. But it's cautious optimism. Okay, let's talk about fixing errors. What kind of errors now? What exactly does the cleaning entail? I've identified 6 things that we do when we say we really clean data, especially from Stata perspective. When we create or change variable labels, now I underline the word labels, we're trying to make things clear. So sometimes there's a label that is there, but it's not, the label is just A, B. Now it has been labeled, but it's not saying anything. So when you're fixing errors, you are trying to bring clarity. That's for error 1. So you can create a label because it was not there, or you can change a label because there's a better way of labeling. The same thing with variable values, and this is talking about consistency. So there's a value for the variable, maybe 4950, or it was a string, and they had Baba itself, Baba Tunde, and things like that were not written properly. You can create a variable value, or you can change the value. So in 3, you can create an completely new variable. And this talks about clarity and consistency. So sometimes you had the length and the breadth, and you're supposed to find the area. Area is length times breadth. And based on the area, there's supposed to be some kind of categorization, probably of land size or an elite club, anything. So it helps to bring clarity sometimes when you create new variables. And I showed you how to create 2 new variables, if you recollect, in module, I think 2 or 3, where we talked about clone, var, and generate. Although there are other ways of generating variables, you have also done duplicate tag, you say generate a variable. Then we drop observations or we keep them. That's completeness. So some observations were not part of the study, should have not been added, or they should have been added. That's when we do deal with completeness. Then we can drop or keep variables. Some variables were never necessary, some variables don't have information, then you drop. And then you can rename variables for clarity. So these are the kind of errors that you find in your major cleaning activities. And they address, you can see all the 3 major measurements of data quality: consistency, completeness, and clarity. So I'd mentioned that before, that you can use these things to clean. So when you are working with your ID variables, we are likely going to be looking at the variable values, observations. So keep if, that may be the things we are checking when we are in that space. So you will see a combination in this module where we begin to combine any of these 6 to address a cleaning problem. So thank you so much for your time. Uh, when we start the cleaning procedure, which we intend to do, this module is quite different from the other modules. We will not do any practicals now. We'll do everything at the end. Hopefully, everything will be clearer when we are done. So, thank you so much. I'll see you in lesson 2 where we'll talk about a few more commands.